Hello? Staring directly into the sun. So I saw a tech video the other day, and by I saw, I mean YouTube wanted me to see. Dun dun dun. I do actually think they have no control over their algorithms, and that's why they recently did that adjustment they were talking about to reduce the amount of what they called conspiracy theory content. Like, it's their tool, and they run it, and they wrote it ostensibly, and they're like, oh, so guys, we found something wrong with it, and we're gonna fix it. Like, you just fix it. Like, if it's not doing what you want it to do, like, why'd you make it do that in the first place? Oh, it's because you didn't make it do that, did you? You just told the computer to do stuff until people clicked lots of links. You know, how make the computer get more eyeballs for us, and then it got more eyeballs for us, and then it's like, oh wait, how is it doing that? That's not a good way. We don't approve of this. So I want to write an article. Is machine learning a racist? Is machine learning sexist? Is machine learning patriarchal? Because there's no way to know. It's like the ultimate black box. Well, I input things into the algorithm and then out comes this. Why? I don't know. Is it because the machine learning, the AI, is a racist? Think about it. Don't even know. Can't even tell. Oh man, that's too funny. But the tech channel, it was talking about how what is it, 2019 or 2018 is the year cell phones died, or the year smartphones died, and it was talking about the general reduction in purchasing and general stagnation of hardware development, like kind of plateaued, and the prices went up to the point that people stopped buying the new ones at least, which means they kept the older ones, which, boy, it is cold. There we go. Get some heat in here. So, this is relevant to my interests, obviously. So, my question is, what is the next device? Like, what's the next hot ticket? What's the next thing that can fill that spot that the smartphone is not necessarily itching? And if it's the case that the smartphone is falling down because it's just too expensive, but people want it anyways, like, that's kind of a hollow. That doesn't really progress things at all. I think that we're still kind of overdue for a. I'm still expecting a big reveal of something where these companies just really reveal how much data they have on us and how it's all collected through smartphones. Something that would help promote, turn people off, I guess, of their smartphones. Like I said, they're useful devices, but what do you give up for them? So, what would be the next thing? What would be useful, taking advantage of that technology? And I would like to say, to be the prognosticator and be like, low power tech, that's where it's going next. And maybe battery life is where that needs to be. Like, I can see that being a huge selling point. But it depends on how much, you're not going to be able to play Bejeweled with 3D acceleration on it, so does it, what is the phone for? It's for Facebook, but Facebook is for, giving up your data and putting your life online while reducing your connection with other people and actively, testably making you sadder. So if people get off of that and they get off of other things, I don't know, I would like to say that it's going to go exactly where I want it to go, but that's very unlikely. Where people actually use the technology as it was intended, where it just helps you, and that's it. All of this still requires more technological know-how and or more simplification. If you make things simpler for these, just calendaring stuff. I don't know. There's... Who was it? It was either Luke Smith or Brian Lunduke who was talking about how, what's next after social media. And there really isn't a good answer for it. Because, if I had the switch for people to flip, they would flip it, I think. And maybe that switch being flipped is virtual private servers. Because people can just, you just turn on a server, and that's relatively easy. And then if you install an image of some prepackaged services, that's your blog, basically, right? That's what we're talking about. But that's kind of meant to replace the social media, not necessarily... See, and I had thought that social media was not good just in general, so maybe the best place to go to replace it is nowhere. To actually talking to people on the phone or seeing them in person, using your mouth, blah, blah, to make words come out. It's amazing how that works. There was I want to say old guy, but he was probably just a little older than me at the time. He said that he doesn't text because using a cell phone to send a text message to someone is like rubbing two lighters together to make fire. I've got this cell phone communication device. How do I talk to people on it? I know, I'll push buttons. I don't know. I don't know. I keep thinking, what is the need being fulfilled? And the need that's being fulfilled is actually a wish. And the wish is that I can communicate with everyone for free and have all of their information, on demand, and be able to play games and pay nothing for it. That's just, I don't think it's a need. I think they created the desire, which you can't fault them for. They made their own market. Pretty impressive work. If only they weren't evil. Allegedly. I don't know. It's just the only thing I can think of is, whatever things you remove from it, it still tracks you at a higher level. The cell phone itself is the problem. Just because your providers still got all that data, and they're still going to sell it. They're still going to have all your text messages, and they're still going to sell them. they're still going to be subject to FISA court stuff. I guess it's just the big change, I guess, is the only answer. Or like a full bounce box. But you can't bounce the cell traffic. I've been toying with this idea of a bounce box. Something that would just forward traffic so that you could have a completely different exit to the internet, so that you can still use Google's services while denying them your everything, all of your information. I started particularly thinking about the speech to text, which is really good with Google. Yeah, I think I already talked about this. Even if it was associated with a different account, and that account was separate from your phone and only hit the internet from some other place that you didn't necessarily register on a cell tower as nearby, I still think it would pick up your voice anyways. But that's just voice, that's identifying stuff. You would have to do like repeaters and separators. And even if you type into a Google search bar, it's still making active requests with every keystroke. And possibly timing those keystrokes anyways. I don't know. You would have to have a like a front-end system that would just take in the queries and then translate them and then process them through Google and then send back the results. You could probably get away with that with location data, but man, I don't know. It seems like the only way to get out of the whole thing is mesh network. Just nowhere near where it needs to be. Or going full low tech. It wasn't that many years ago that I would print out directions on MapQuest and then follow the directions to get there, to get to where I was going. But then endpoint doesn't even matter. Because even if you do like a Tor browser thing, if you have revealing information like your voice or your typing cadence being sent across, that's identifying. Filters need to be in front of all of this. What's that Maps place? Mapski? Mapski.nl or something? I gotta look that up. You telnet to a server and you get a view of open maps generated live in a terminal session via telnet. And it works. It works. I zoomed in on my house. It's a little clunky to get there, but when it can process directions, well, I'm pretty okay with street names. Well, we would need to have a open source maps. Open source maps would be pretty neat. Well, open source maps exist. I don't know if open source directions exist. It's the Open Maps project. And you can download those. You can have directions on a device that's offline that just has a GPS, connector to it. And even if you have just a GPS connector, I mean, those things didn't have cell data. You would download maps onto the GPS device, and then you would use it for directions. and it would track you via GPS and... Are you going? No? It would track you via GPS and update your location. But it wouldn't have... Like, it was offline, basically, as soon as you unplugged it from your computer. It didn't have an antenna in it, aside from the GPS antenna. And you can look at that data that comes across on that band, so I feel rather secure about that. Yeah, well, no, even if it did have some kind of unique tracking identifier, you could correlate that data with your phone's location. It all comes back to the phone. Like, as long as they know where you are and where you're going and where you've been, like, you can correlate pretty much any data that's, this seems kind of like where this person would be, and you compare the two data points and they're exactly the same for location and time and all that. Like, okay, this is the same person. We now know that this completely unconnected GPS device is registered to Troy Fletcher, or associated with 99.9% accuracy to Troy Fletcher. It would all have to be anonymized through completely separate accounts. That would make it harder. Maybe the answer is the Thomas Guide. Does Thomas Guide still exist? You can buy these Thomas Guide printed maps, and with a little bit of effort learn how to read them, and then know where you were and where you were going. You could find where you were in the book. It's very doable. I don't even know if they still exist. Somehow I feel like this all comes back to Emacs. Emacs opens up so much, not even just tools, but just interface for your Linux computer. People say, like, oh, well, Emacs can do pretty much anything, and Emacs doesn't do pretty much anything, and that's not the correct answer. Emacs can do pretty much anything. It's just that Emacs is a really good interface for Linux, and Linux can do pretty much anything. You know, my coffee maker is pretty much just a shell script that's managed and gets output and displays and receives input via Emacs. So I don't know. Well, I'll be using Emacs to generate directions on our phone so that we can get to where we need to go. Of Richard Stallman doing the voice narration. Turn left on A Street in 500 yards. Also note that Linux, while you say Linux, what you really mean is GNU Linux. It's a completely different... Oh boy. This isn't even worth uploading.